morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad
we
you're
all alone
here.
in here? Are we all alone?
Just you and I talking about Malik Monk. There's mornings when I just want to start the show and I just want to get hype. I'm hype. I'm hype, but I feel like I'm so hype. I need this lounge time. I need the Locked On Hornets lounge music to just settle me down a little bit.
Absolutely. You don't want to go in half cocked. You want
right.
to be
Maybe a quarter cocked. Maybe a third cocked even. Here's my
exciting.
thing. It's one quarter. It's one game. So I want to try to settle my own emotions. But at the same time, I know that everyone's excited. Rich is already on the live chat. Monk, Bacon, the people want the rookie talk.
Hey, I'll tell you who's not settling down and who is all in is the guy sitting behind me last night at the Hornets game.
Tell me about it.
Very excited. I learned a lot. I was at the game with our friend Alan from Frame Warehouse, courtesy of Night Residential Group, some of our new friends, Doug.
Yeah, hey, just real quick, Frame Warehouse, they are bringing this episode to you. So thanks to our friends at Frame Warehouse. This is what they call serendipity. Visit framewarehouse.net. Anyway, go ahead. This fan at the game.
I think everyone has this experience when they go to a very, very excited fan. Very much a Malik Monk fan. We'd learn later on in the evening, very much a Kentucky fan. So a lot of this started to make sense as we went through. He had a lot of interesting views on how to approach the game. Wanted the Hornets to push the ball at all times. 1-on-4, 1-on-5, didn't matter. Just push it.
Salt and pepper fan.
But I tell you what, man, when Monk started flowing, he was on fire. And he said on fire in Spanish a lot. He said en fuego, en fuego.
Okay, yes. That's a thing that people will do. En fuego.
So he was excited about it, as was everyone, man.
Well, listen.
We'll get into this, but you've been into more games than I have this season. But when Monk started going,
I'll say
it's got to be the most hype. Okay.
I'll say this, David. So, in the media section, you're not allowed to cheer. It's just kind of a rule.
It's unprofessional.
It's a professional rule, right?
Right.
I'll tell you this. My toes were curling. I didn't cheer, but my toes were curling. All right, let's start. That's a good place to start the show.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
Oh, my notes are all scattered. Malik Monk's got me swervy. All right, this is Locked On Hornets, your daily podcast on the Charlotte Hornets and the NBA. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you've just started listening to us, maybe you don't know about the Locked On Podcast Network, we've got a podcast on the NFL, the NBA. Locked On Panthers is just on fire right now. Got to listen to Bill Rossetti and the gang at Locked On Panthers. The Locked On Podcast Network just has you covered. I'm Doug Branson. We are coming to you live from the Gittimer.com studios in BEA, beautiful uptown Charlotte. After a Hornets victory, I'm joined by the man, the myth, the legend from the mean streets of Cotswold, David Walker.
Everyone is in fuego this morning, Doug. Doug, just real quick to finish my story.
Please.
If you don't tune in for the lounge portion of the show, folks, make sure to do that.
YouTube.com/Locked On Hornets.
So we had a gentleman last night behind us that kept saying en fuego, en fuego, en fuego. And at one point, his friend leaned over to him and goes, "What does that mean?" He's like, "I don't know."
Oh, we need a Spanish to English dictionary in section 106.
Sir, if you are listening, which based on some of your comments, you do not listen. I enjoyed it. It was have fun. It was a great Hornets game. I'm glad you enjoyed Malik Monk.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Frame Warehouse. They have the guaranteed best price on your next framing project. Visit framewarehouse.net today. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this episode, David, because everything offensively, let's put big quotes around that. Offensively, everything came together for the Charlotte Hornets against Milwaukee. Before we get to that, should we get to some of this good injury news? See, we not only have a great game to talk about, but we got some good news on the injury front. Should we tackle that first?
Good injury news. Yes, we all need more good injury news.
Okay, so both MCW and Nick Batum closing in on returns to the court. Yesterday, the Hornets recalled Michael Carter-Williams from his less than 24-hour rehab assignment in Greensboro. According to Rick Bonnell of the Charlotte Observer, general manager Rich Cho said the assignment was to get him up there for a scrimmage, essentially to test his knees, and that he could make a debut during this upcoming 4-game road trip. So, David, we had thought maybe he's going to be there for a little bit, get some game action in, upgrade his conditioning, but it sounds like just wanted to give it a final test, and apparently there's a lot of paperwork and press releases that need to go out when that happens. So that's good news.
Was this possible before the new relationship?
Is this news hitting you in a certain way?
Was this possible, you think, before the new relationship with his team? I couldn't have been, right? Like just to drive up there and get a scrimmage in and then drive on back to Charlotte?
No, yeah. I mean, it's a benefit, of having a G League team. Just being able to say, hey, we need to send this guy for a scrimmage real quick, try this out, try his knees out in a game type. It's odd that, because you feel like they run a lot of scrimmages in practice. It's odd that they didn't practice.
But it was a game day.
Yeah, they didn't. Exactly, they didn't practice that day. So maybe, it was a final test, I guess, before they hit the road. So okay, now I'm making sense of it in my head. Okay, so we have
to talk it out.
That's good news. Now to Nick Batum, who's been out with that sprained left elbow. He could be back to practicing very soon and is targeting 2 to 3 weeks on a return. This also comes from the Observer and Rick Bonnell. He's been with the team and is a constant figure at practice, putting up shots this entire period, essentially, almost since he got the injury. The 2 to 3 week timeline would put him on the early side of the original 6 to 8 week timeline. What's it going to mean to have Nick Batum back in the month of November, David?
Man, am I crazy to be nervous about this?
I don't think so. I hate that you're not, because we're probably going to agree here, because I'm a little nervous too. Why are you nervous?
It just seems like, especially where we started with this, that it could have been the whole season or 6 to 8 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever. And it's great that he's making progress and feeling better. It seemed like a pretty serious injury when it happened. So I'm more inclined to lean towards them taking as much time as they need, especially, things are going okay. Things are going all right. You don't want to lose him for a longer period of time just by bringing him back too soon.
Yeah, here's what makes me nervous.
And maybe that's a worry ward. Maybe we're just worrying, Doug.
Well, sometimes we need that. Sometimes we have to bring that perspective. Here's what concerns me, okay? This was supposed to be a turning point season for Nick Batum. He did not go and play for the French national team. He was focused on his NBA game, and he was excited about this season. And so when the injury happens and he learns that there's an option outside of surgery that would get him back 6 to 8 weeks, it was almost immediate that was the decision. And I think that tells you that Nick Batum wants to play, and he wants to play this season. And I think you could fairly infer that he wants to play as soon as possible. And we do know one thing. The Charlotte Hornets training staff is on the conservative side of things. They hold guys out a little longer than maybe some other training staffs would. So that makes me a little less nervous. But how quickly he was back at practice, putting up shots with that wrap around his elbow, not even cast, but a wrap.
Yeah.
That shows you he wants to get out there. He wants to get back into action as quickly as possible. And I hope the Hornets remain concerned. I think the 5-3 start helps that. They're not 0-8, David. It's not panic time in Charlotte. So I think you can afford, and especially if you get Michael Carter-Williams back on this road trip, and he's healthy, and he remains healthy, and there's no pain issues with the knees, then I think you have to be conservative with Nick Batum. As much as I know fans out there, people on the chat right now, they want Nick Batum back. They want to see Batum and Zeller in that second unit. So many things to be excited about. But the key to a playoff victory, series victory, is Nick Batum.
And haven't we seen this before? Certainly, I feel like with Cody, he's tried to come back and maybe had a little hiccup. MCW didn't make it all the way back, but obviously MKG has had some things. And, like, that's not on the training staff. And all these guys are different. Their bodies are different. Their ailments are different. It's
blah, blah, blah. We're not doctors.
Although.
This is not licensed medical advice.
I mean, yeah, I think you have to take it as a positive, but I still hope they're approaching it very cautiously.
I don't know if you know this, David, but this is the absolute best time of the year to get something framed. Did you know that?
I did. I did know that.
Whether it's a holiday gift, a home decoration, or something for your bonus room, now is the time to get your framing done and get it done right with our friends at Frame Warehouse. We're proud to partner up with Frame Warehouse because they've been family-owned right here in the heart of Charlotte for over 35 years. They have the guaranteed best price on every framing project. And when we say they're friends of the show, they are literally friends of this show. They're people we trust. At Frame Warehouse, you can frame almost anything for next to nothing. If you can think of it, you can get it framed. We're talking sports memorabilia. How about some posters for your office? See, I'm thinking I'm ready to talk about this Milwaukee game already. Maybe a Monk poster for your kid's bedroom, some jerseys. They'll even cube up that Frank Reich signed Panthers helmet you always tell people about, and I know you're telling people about it. The best part is that Frame Warehouse makes the whole process super easy, and I don't know about you, David, but I need easy when it comes to framing. Frame Warehouse has framing experts that will walk you through this process and turn your project around quickly and for an amazing price. Don't let your prized possessions go undisplayed. Get that stuff up on the wall. Talk to our friends at Frame Warehouse at one of their 6 locations in Charlotte. Go to framewarehouse.net, framewarehouse.net, to find the one nearest you and tell them Locked On Hornets told you to drop by. That's very important. And give them a Go Hornets, Go America, Let's Swarm Charlotte. Okay. David, I got to save my voice because I may get too excited about this. I want to go to the chat first because everybody's excited about this. Let's see. Dwayne saying my 10-point prediction was looking good. Yeah, the defense let you down there, Dwayne. Almost had that prediction right. Matthew asking David, were you sitting in front of me because I was out of my mind when Monk went off?
I don't know. Were you in Fuego?
Dwayne said, ceiling is the roof for this team when Batum and MCW comes back. Let's see if I can get some more in here.
Then you should have been going out of your mind when Monk was getting all lathered up. Like, that was exactly the proper reaction because I was as well.
All right, Hornets get a big victory over the Milwaukee Bucks in this rematch where, you remember in the first game, they could not effectively get offense going, get the ball moving, knock down shots at the end of that game. They were tied 94-94, and Milwaukee goes on a run and wins that game. Well, that wasn't the case in this one. They win 126-121, and you guys know the stats. 25 points for Malik Monk, 10 of 17 from the field. He scores 18 of those in the fourth quarter, and 4 3-pointers for Malik Monk. I want to play this before we get into this. This is a new version of Box Score Boogie that I'm doing for ESPN 7:30 a.m. here in Charlotte. I want to play it for you, and you can tune in to the wake-up call in the morning on ESPN 7:30 to hear this as well. Here's Box Score Boogie. Hornets rookie Malik Monk trading in his squirrel hunting license for Bucks season. I'm Doug Branson, and these are the numbers you need to know from last night's game. It's time for the Box Score Boogie. Let's start with the number 4. That's the number of 3-pointers that Malik Monk drained in the fourth quarter, 4 in the 4. He scored 16 of the Hornets' first 18 points of the final quarter and 25 total for the game. That's a season high. After a few rough outings, the second unit finally gave the Hornets the lift that they needed. Monk said after the game, quote, "It was our time."
And that's what the second group is for. And we just try to pick up the energy the first group fall off or anything like that. We just try to pick the energy up, and that's what happened.
Next up, 14 points. That's a season low for Bucks superstar Giannis Antetokounmpo, who played in foul trouble all night. Ironically, Giannis was just about the only thing the Hornets could defend. They allowed 19 made threes on the evening. Finally, the lucky number 7. Kemba Walker, 7 of 7 from the line tonight. He entered this game leading the NBA in free throws made at 7.4 per game and shooting a career-high 91.2%. Kemba, what's been the difference so far?
I have no idea, honestly. I'm just being aggressive, man. Just trying to be as smart as possible. Just get contact and just try to get to the line as much as I can.
It's a mystery to Kemba, and fans hope that mystery stays alive. Next up, the Hornets begin a 4-game road trip on Friday against the San Antonio Spurs. For more Box Score Boogie, subscribe to the Locked On Hornets podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, whatever you use to get your podcast. Just search Locked On Hornets. All right, David. You can check those out on ESPN 730, the wake-up call. What do you think? Malik Monk, Dwayne Bacon taking over the fourth quarter. Amazing.
Yeah, Doug. And one thing to note on this, the Hornets went 10 deep last night. So you had Kaminsky, Bacon, Treveon Graham, Malik Monk, and Cody Zeller in there. And that unit really starting to look like it's gelling. You know what I mean? I mean, you can see it out there on the court. I think there's a lot more comfort with those guys playing together. I started to wonder what it's going to look like when Batum does come back, and obviously Lamb would shift down in there. What do you think about that? Just real quick, we can dive into that when it gets closer. But I think obviously you're looking at Graham and Bacon as maybe the odd men out there. I mean, initial reaction, who do you think kind of maybe takes a back seat if Lamb's in that unit?
Well, I think it's going to be matchup based, right? Because if they needed a little extra punch of defense, I think they go with Treveon Graham if they need some size and strength. But if they need offense, then I think you go with Dwayne Bacon. I think it's interesting that once Lamb goes to the second unit, it's going to help their defense because you're getting a little size, strength, and length from Lamb defensively if he maintains the same level of awareness, attentiveness, commitment to defense that he's shown in the starting unit. That's going to help this second unit because, look, I'm excited about 25 points from Malik Monk. I'm excited about what Dwayne Bacon was able to do. But for the past 3 games, they've been struggling to knock down shots. Monk came into this past 3, not able to get over 33% shooting, and then Monk was 3 of 19 over the past 3 as well, 0 3-pointers. So, the second unit lifted this team last night, but it's because they made shots, not necessarily because they were able to lock down defensively. No. They were just able to outpace the Milwaukee Bucks in scoring when Giannis Antetokounmpo was not on the floor. And Monk did it. Monk not only did it in the fourth quarter, he did it in the second quarter as well. Both Monk and Bacon lit them up in the beginning of the second quarter. They went on a 12-3 run that got the lead back in their favor after the Bucks went up 40-30. So they did it twice, but it's all been shot making, David. That's what concerns me a little bit is that you look across the stats for the past couple of games and the 3-point attempt rate is dropping and the unassisted 2-point offense is rising. So what does that say? Well, it says that they're making tough shots and that's helping their offense, but I don't know how sustainable that is, and I think that's why after the game, Steve Clifford was focused on defense going into this road trip because, those shots are going to dry up. Malik Monk's going to continue to have games where he goes from en fuego to, I just trapped myself. This is what you have to learn, to very cold. Right. And, that's just a reality of what's going on with this second unit right now until Michael Carter-Williams and Nick Batum return.
That's a good point. Carter-Williams in the mix there as well. I mean, look, the Bucks really only played 8 guys. So I think, DeAndre Liggins played 6 minutes, but everyone else, they only had 3 guys playing significant minutes last night. So I think the depth and the bench production from the Hornets really came into play, as you said. I mean, all of the guys off the bench had a positive plus-minus. Frank, 18, Dwayne Bacon, 5. Treveon Graham did not score a point, a 16, and fouled out. He had his hands full with Middleton, who was on fire as well. But yeah, I mean, you're still seeing Monk getting burned on quite a few backdoor cuts last night as well. He got bailed out on one with a sloppy pass late. But there's still some concentration and some awareness issues with him for sure. But I think what fans have to be happy about is you saw the glimpse of the Kentucky 40-point Malik Monk last night. Like when he got going, you could see it. The basket just became, like a manhole cover for him. And he was doing it from outside, but he was also being aggressive, trying to drive where he could. His floater was locked in. So certainly the defensive side of the ball is always going to be paramount for this team. And you can hear when, like Clifford talks about it, but that message is getting filtered down, Doug. You're in the locker room, you're talking to these guys, and every time they are commenting on something, it's keeping a mind on the defense, right? Like keeping defense in mind and to know that they have to play on that side of the ball. So it's going to continue to be a concentration. But look, you got Frank Kaminsky out there and you got Malik Monk out there. Those guys are out there to put the ball in the basket, right?
Absolutely. And it's a trust issue, right? Because the veterans trust these guys to go out and make it happen in the fourth quarter. And more importantly, Coach Clifford trusts both Malik Monk and Dwayne Bacon this early in their career to go out there and give maximum effort and to make progress. It was the subject of this game's Inside the Locker Room segment. Take a listen.
Come on now, you guys always kill me. I don't play young guys, I'm playing them. No, you don't, but I mean, that's the big thing. No, I mean, I see the same thing. I mean, it's just, listen, I say to you, because somebody said the other day, you could be nicer about the young guys. That's where young guys get screwed up.
We still kind of make mistakes, especially us two, and at this time we just got to learn from them and get better. We got to make less mistakes when we're in the game because we're playing a lot right now, but you never know what could happen.
I'll just try to bring energy, a lot of energy, and that's what the second group is for. And we just try to pick up the energy. The first group fall off or anything like that. We just try to pick the energy up, and that's what happened.
I don't feel like we're going to get worse. I feel like we're going to get better. Especially us two, as us playing together and just being connected with the team.
Gotta love Coach Clifford there, commenting on some of the we've tried to squelch that idea, saying, look, Clifford has depended a lot on Cody Zeller in his rookie season. He depended a lot on Frank Kaminsky, his rookie season, played a ton of minutes, got a ton of run there in the first year, and it's really Noah Vonleh. That's like the one guy, and it's because he just didn't, just couldn't pick the game up fast enough, and eventually got shipped to Portland because of that. So So why? So David, the question is like, why is he depending so heavily on this rookie set? Why do you think that's the case? I have some speculation.
Well, I think the obvious thing is that he's had some guys out. So, like, obviously with MKG out, he had to depend on Bacon earlier on, and with some other guys that can't handle the ball, or no one else can handle the ball, he had to put Monk in there earlier. But they can play. First of all, I think Bacon is a little more seasoned guy. He's not a younger guy coming out of college. He's had some experience, and Malik Monk's a flat out scorer. But also they've shown, especially Malik has shown the commitment and the want to on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's always going to be important to Clifford, even if he has slip ups. He's shown the willingness to work on that. But his hands been forced a little bit, but they've also been able to produce. I do think he's been a little more patient. I mean, I think you have to look at Monk especially and say he's been a little more patient with him than maybe in years past. And again, maybe some of that was forced, but certainly he's given him a little longer leash because I think he's shown the potential to perform.
Well, he said after the game that you have to be fair with Malik Monk. He's offensively, I mean, he's seeing things defensively that he hasn't seen at all in college, in his 1 year at college. I mean, teams are scheming against Monk. I mean, they're preparing for him every night, and that's tough. Because he is one of the few. Like if you shut him down offensively, you've got a great shot at shutting down the second unit offensively in general. But I want to go back to what you said. They can play and they know they can play. David, it's the confidence, it's the assertiveness that Dwayne Bacon and Malik Monk put on display. It's why Daniel here on the chat says, I was at the game last night. Monk was breathtaking to see in person, and he's breathtaking because, like, when he gets the ball in his hands and he gets that look in his eye and he just has this posture, and you're like, He's going. It's the same thing we take for granted in Kemba Walker now, but it's that mentality that like, oh my God, he's going to take this shot, and it doesn't matter where he takes this shot, he's going to put this shot up, and when it goes in time after time after time, that's when it starts to get really exciting. But it's that assertiveness, it's that confidence that they put on display that I think has allowed them to be on the floor for extended amounts of time, even though they have both shown that defensively they have a lot to learn. And a lot of this goes to practice as well. We've heard this several times from Coach Clifford. Both of these guys dedicated in practice, great practice players, working hard, watching film, trying to get better. I think they drafted two guys that, yes, they can play on the court, but they have their priorities in the right place off the court. Did you hear Malik Monk in an interview say the NBA is boring?
Boring, yeah.
And he didn't mean what was happening on the court, because that's, he's been learning a lot. That's not been boring. Mm-hmm. But it's the off time when he's, he puts in the work that he needs to put in, and then there's just like, nothing to do.
That's good.
Yeah, you want to hear those things from your rookies,
especially
right?
From a rookie, from a 19-year-old, 20-year-old. Yeah, he just wants to hoop, man. Just wants to get out there and play, and that's you're right. You can see it in those two guys. They share a confidence, and we saw it from day one at the press conference, man. They want to have the ball, they want to score, and I just don't think you can have enough of that, especially in today's NBA, or at least the Hornets can. I mean, that's been an area they've been lacking for several seasons, and you saw last night in Malik Monk a little bit of what Jeremy Lin was able to provide on some nights, right? Like he can win you a game in a spurt over a quarter. And the Hornets just have not had another guy outside of Kemba Walker consistently be able to do that, certainly not off the bench. And they were able to add at least one. I'm not saying Monk is going to be able to do – I mean, Bacon's going to be able to do that type of spurt offensively anytime soon, but at least Monk can go in there, and they added both those guys to the draft. I mean, that's just a huge boost for this team that was so strapped with ways to improve. And Clifford's, man, he's got to be excited just having those two guys out there, and Bacon able to guard multiple positions. It's exciting for Hornets fans to have some new toys to play with, as we always talk about.
Why is confidence important? You heard Clifford there say that he's in that inside the locker room segment that it sounds like he's demanding of rookies. And we know he's demanding of everyone defensively. But it sounds like, I don't know if tough's the right word, but I think he sees himself as someone that asks a lot of rookies where maybe some coaches don't necessarily do that. And he believes that it's good for young players to go through that. But I think you're seeing the early success of Malik Monk and Dwayne Bacon because they have confidence, but they don't have hubris. Because if you have hubris and somebody's a little tough on you, you can react negatively to that and say, wait a minute, no, listen, I'm ordained. I'm supposed to be here, and you're getting in the way of that. But that's not what we saw. Think about what Malik Monk did last night, okay? He comes in into the late first, into the second quarter, and lights it up. Then sits from the 3:30 mark of the second quarter, sits the entire third quarter. Jeremy Lamb plays that entire third quarter. And then Malik Monk re-entered in the fourth, and you heard him. Brought the same amount of energy in the fourth quarter that he brought in the second quarter, and saved the game. Won the game.
Won the game.
How many rookies could do that? I think. Look, I'm as excited as everyone watching these Donovan Mitchell. He's getting 35, 36 minutes in Utah, watching these 28 points on 21 shots. Great. I'm so happy for Donovan. I think it's exciting to watch him play. I just wonder if Donovan Mitchell could sit an entire third quarter and then come in the fourth quarter and knock down 4 threes. I don't know. Maybe he can.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know either. But that's what you have in Malik Monk. As Steve Bob said, he's been touched by the basketball gods. That's right.
Hopefully he makes a return tomorrow for Fun Friday. I don't want to make any promises on this show that I can't keep, but there's a chance.
I think to me, looking at this rookie class, it seems like a lot of those guys have that same mentality. Like they are confident, but they're willing to listen and learn. And maybe it's just some of the younger crop, like Jaylen Brown kind of sticks out. He's not a rookie, but some of those guys, Tatum, seem to stick out to me like that. And you mentioned Clifford. I mean, we know he's going to be straightforward with all his guys. And so you're right. You can react one way to that and have it go horribly bad. But these guys both seem like they are taking everything and learning from it. And I also think that speaks to, which we haven't talked about a lot, Doug, the chemistry on this team. It looks really good right now. And I think that was maybe the major concern with Dwight Howard coming in, was that maybe, there would be a rocky start or you go through some bumpy times. But these guys look like they're having a lot of fun. And, of course, they're winning, so it's easier. But it certainly looks like they've welcomed in these young guys. Marvin's the first guy to jump up and chest bump Monk after a timeout last night. And how about Marvin? How about Marvin with a couple big threes?
Yeah, I think having one of his best games of the season. What did he finish with there, David? I don't know,
15 or so?
Yeah, 15 points, 5 of 8 shooting, 3 of 5 from beyond the arc. Again, getting open shots because Kemba Walker drawing the defense away, Jeremy Lamb and his shot making demanding attention, and Dwight Howard.
Kaminsky?
And Frank Kaminsky.
4 assists?
Okay. Look, the ball's moving right now. Everyone's feeling it, and they've got a lot of time with each other in this early going because, Kemba, he's had to play a lot. I think that's a concern as well. Let's go to the chat here. The King of the Crux here on the chat. Welcome in. Thanks to all the people that are on the live chat, youtube.com/Locked On Hornets. Saying, quick question, with Lamb playing so well right now, do you think MKG might be the one moved to the bench when Batum gets back?
Popular question, though.
Popular question, but the answer, I think, is no. And I'll tell you why. Because Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, when he's on the floor, the Hornets are 5 points better. And you say, well, Doug, he plays with the starting unit. The starters have played much better than the bench. So get out of here with that stat. Okay, calm down. Calm down. Let me give you another stat. Opposing three-point field goal percentage. When Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is off the floor, it's 35.6%. When he's on the floor, it drops to 29.2%.
Yeah.
And I think you could make a very good argument that if Michael Kidd-Gilchrist did not leave that game 7 minutes in with an illness, that Middleton doesn't score 43 points. No way. And if he doesn't score 43 points, then this game isn't even close. Then Dwayne's prediction of a 10-point victory might have been wrong still because they could have won by 15. Right. MKG makes a huge difference defensively. He has to start the game because that's how you prevent guys like Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton from getting hot early. Defense early, offense late. That's the philosophy. So far, it's been a winning philosophy for the Charlotte Hornets. Yeah, Rich saying, wow, 29.2. I know. It's because, Rich, Dwight Howard underneath the rim, guys can fly at three-point shooters right now. MKG can play a lot more aggressive, can be up in guys' shirts. He doesn't have to sag back. It's been a major difference.
And think back to how many of those Middleton threes were shockingly open, especially late, especially down the stretch. I mean, and not to say they wouldn't have been if MKG's out there all the time, but like that's just the mentality that he brings, and I think it is contagious. But you mentioned him pairing up with Dwight Howard. I think that's the key. I mean, that's how Charlotte's been able to climb back up into the top, almost the top 5 defensive rating and a top 5 defensive team in the NBA. So they definitely want to have him out there to start.
Couple of quick notes before we go, David, because we haven't really talked about Kemba Walker's game. We haven't talked about Dwight Howard's game.
Too much to talk about.
I know. There was a lot of offense. Look, when you score 126 points, there's a lot to talk about, and that's not a normal thing in Hornets basketball. And I think it's something that we've already talked about. Might not be terribly sustainable, but exciting to watch, especially at home in the Spectrum Center. Hopefully there's a little word of mouth that happens, David, from that game. This is, hey, maybe.
So what'd you think?
Maybe time to get out the Spectrum Center. It's thin. It's a Wednesday night game. It's always going to be tough. But at the same time, I think everybody who was at that game, Matthew was at the game here on the chat, and I think Daniel was at the game as well. Start spreading the word. Spread the news. Hornets are back in town. or they will be in 9 days. They've got a 4-game road trip coming up.
Oh, boy.
Quick notes on this one, though. Kemba Walker went 7 of 7 from the free throw line. He entered the game leading the NBA in free throws made per game with 7.4. That's tied with DeMarcus Cousins, and he's shooting a career-high 91.2%. That's Steph Curry numbers. That's Damian Lillard numbers. Just one aspect of Kemba Walker's game that has taken another leap, and I asked Kemba about it. I said, what's it's probably not any easier necessarily, but what's going on with the free throw thing? And he said, I don't know. So it's a mystery. That's funny. But Dwight Howard having 17 points and 11 rebounds. That's a good bounce-back game to go along with a season high, tying 3 assists. That's the 6th double-double in 8 games this season. Dwight Howard making a huge difference in this one. Just want to say hello to Z-Bird every day on the chat. Buzz Nation, what's up? Welcome to the nest. Hashtag Buzzamaniacs.
How about those assists, Doug? That's something that Clifford mentioned. Something that Clifford mentioned in the offseason, being able to go through Dwight a little bit and have him distribute the ball all the time, but certainly he's being able to create. Yeah, and he's some dishes going to the basket, man. I mean that's just something that is just an added bonus, I think. Along with those, how about those free throws? How about that straight on banker?
Who said? Somebody said last. No, it was J-Dog who emailed in and said, "Hey, by the way, make sure to ask David about Dwight's free throws. He's trolling you, David."
What about?
Wants you to talk about him. Look, teams are doing the hack of Dwight. We've seen it twice now. Milwaukee tried to pull it off, and Dwight hit 1 of 2 on each of his trips, and you can't do it under 2 minutes. I think, right? Then it's like an intentional deal. So if you can get to the 2-minute mark, then you're golden.
And they didn't really start doing it until it was between 3 and 2 minutes, I think. So they only had a couple shots at it. Look, man, it's crazy, dude. They look okay. I mean, they look straight most of the time. I think he's still going to be about 50% when the season's over, and I think you take that. So
you've got a team in the Hornets right now that are feeding off the electricity of Kemba Walker's continued ascension towards All-NBA status, and they're also feeding off the joy of the game that Dwight Howard has and the physicality and intensity that he's showing on the court. It's a defensive bump and a rebounding bump even over last season in Atlanta, and we've talked about how people wanted to give Howard grief about his season in Atlanta for how it ended, but if you look across that season, it was a bounce-back year for Dwight. That's what made this trade crazy to the Hornets, was that they're getting – he just didn't fit in Atlanta. Budenholzer – I don't think Budenholzer really ever envisioned an offense surrounding Dwight Howard. Charlotte and Steve Clifford, this is where Dwight Howard was supposed to be. I'm lit. I'm lit on this show, as the kids say.
Well, and let's talk about that just for a second. The 4-game road stretch. I mean, you can't ask for a better send-off. 2 good games.
Needed a 3-game win streak. Needed that going into this 4-game road trip.
Yep, and Monk had 2 good games back to back. That's encouraging. So definitely going to be a tough test here with this team, but you got to feel good about it. I mean, man, 5-3, hit the road. A Spurs team with no Kawhi Leonard. I think they just called Tony Parker up from their G League team as well. So
we will have a full preview of that game coming up tomorrow. It's hashtag Fun Friday. You want to make sure to check us out. Come join us live on YouTube, youtube.com/ Locked On Hornets. Mark here on the chat saying MKG tears off his jersey, and I think that we were all thinking shoulder injury. Yeah, it was a real strange thing. He walked in the locker room, but Steve Clifford saying after the game that MKG not feeling well before the game, maybe similar to what happened to Frank Kaminsky, tried to give it a go, couldn't. And you want to be cautious with illnesses and basketball because it's such a physically demanding sport, especially on your hydration. You remember, David, when Cody Zeller had to miss a few games because he lost like 10 pounds mysteriously, and it was because of a hydration issue, because these guys sweat so tremendously that you can lose 10 pounds very quickly if you're not staying on top of it. So if you add, any kind of stomach issue or any kind of illness to that, and we don't know what exactly it was, but if you add anything like that, you got to be really careful with that stuff, and it makes the flu game, the bad pizza game, the food poisoning game, whatever you want to call it, from Michael Air Jordan, all the more amazing.
No, it comes back to MJ. There we go.
You know who is good at basketball?
Michael Jordan. All right, that'll do it for us here on Locked On Hornets. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks to our sponsor for this episode, Frame Warehouse. Visit framewarehouse.net today and get that prized possession that you've been waiting to get framed. Get it up on the wall with our friends at Frame Warehouse. We're back again tomorrow with a preview. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Hornets. Thanks so much to everyone on the live chat. Rich, Mark, Daniel, King of Crux, Z-Bird Every Day, Matthew. Who else we got here? Dwayne, of course. Can't forget about Dwayne. Thanks so much for being on the live chat. Join us again tomorrow. YouTube.com/Locked On Hornets. For David, I'm Doug. Go Hornets. Go America. Let's swarm Charlotte.